Thank you, Lloyd, and really want to thank Jeremiah for sort of teeing this up and setting the whole stage. I had the opportunity to join the governor and his staff when he toured the Industrial Heartland. We have a technology that's being commercialized by one of the companies up there in the oil sands, and some of their strategies includes the infrastructure of pipes, rail, transload facilities, and strategically mapping that out. And so Lloyd asked me to kind of share some of the insights. I was fortunate, even though this is a volunteer, non-paying job, as a board member of the Infrastructure Authority, the governor did buy me dinner, and I got to join one of those dinners that Jeremiah talked about. So I did get dinner on the governor. So I'm probably going to go a little more follow in deeper detail on resources and possibilities without really picking any one particular thing, because the process is going to go through and evaluate that. Going to review the synergies, the integration opportunities to improve efficiencies, economics, things of that nature, but also evaluate the market potential. So there's a lot of things we could make, but if the market is already saturated, it may not be a good idea to put a lot of money and time into that. But if the market is growing and it's not fulfilled, it might be a good opportunity. So that whole market factor has to get addressed too. And where is that market? Is it close to Wyoming, or is it a long distance? So do we have another export opportunity? Maybe that would be a good thing. So that kind of gets to where the whole big picture. Where do we aim? You know, if it's this year, our vision tends to be much better. And as we get further out, we might keep more options on the table because we haven't quite narrowed it down, and our crystal ball gets a little less clear as we go further out, and then we had more options and even more options. And I think this kind of park is a multi-decade kind of a initiative and endeavor. So one of the key things I think we need to look at is not designing a park on what the market is today, but where's the market going to be 10, 20, 30 years from now? Because these kind of big process plants will have a 40, 50-year life. And so the market 80 years from now is important. So how do we have the flexibility and the optionality to make sure that this park will be competitive and viable, and those long-term future things that we maybe can't really understand quite yet. So where will the market be? We're definitely seeing a lot of market changes right now that are affecting Wyoming significantly, and a lot of them are environmental regulatory, mercury, air toxic standards. That alone is projected to cause 1/6 of the U.S. coal power plants to be retired this year and next. Regional haze, CO2, greenhouse gas life cycle analysis talked about earlier, and ozone. So regional haze and ozone and some of these stricter standards can actually limit economic and business development growth and expansion if they're going to have emissions in any one of these categories that push us beyond attainment levels. So as these stricter limits come into play, we need to think about how do we deal with that. And part of the integration park is that we can have a better integrated environmental emission profile because there's energy efficiencies of integrating plants together, economics. Someone's waste stream might be another plant's feedstock and usable resource, and we can take advantage of those things that we can't think about if we're only looking at one plant and only designing for one plant. So that's some of the sort of the engineering kind of concepts. And also look at that, I talked about these regulations, but a lot of state and business and the investment community, we heard a lot of that talk. They're actually out ahead of our federal government at some time on some of these market changes. Our federal government is playing catch up, if you will. So we have to look at not just what our federal government is doing, but what's happening in the business community with things like this whole sustainability movement. It's making more progress. A lot of companies are embracing doing sustainability reporting, and that's a key measure that they're using as to how good of a steward are they being as a corporate citizen in the world. So the things we need to keep an eye out for, that those are changing the markets even more than national and federal governments. And so that dynamic and changing, especially in the energy sector, is very dramatic and very quick within the last decade or so. So being able to maximize our flexibility and keeping our options open so we don't box ourselves in or limit the things that we might be able to adapt to as the future unfolds. And so I thought I'd just put some slides together on what are our resources, what are the things that we can start thinking about, how we can play them together and work them together. So trona, soda ash. Wyoming is the largest producer of that in the world. Great for making glass. Helium, rare earth elements, the northeast part of the state, permitting an activity to open up a rare earth mine. A lot of interesting things we can make with those. And then we have a lot of energy resources. And Wyoming historically is one of the lowest energy cost suppliers in the country. That's of significant competitive business advantage to any company looking to put a large energy-intensive process plant in the state, because it gives them a competitive advantage when it comes to economic downturns. Maybe they can be more price competitive. They can ride through an economic downturn because their cost of operations can be lower. So coal, natural gas, oil, uranium, wind, geothermal, hydro, and we do have a gentleman who's working on tired fuels in the state. We have a lot of tires that people are looking to recycle to make transportation fuels. So those just to name a few of the resources that we have. And then looking at the infrastructure assets the state already has or could build upon and expand. Rail. And we also have a number of transload facilities that have actually recently been built in the state. So bringing pipelines, crude oil pipelines, natural gas pipelines, rail, storage tanks, blending tanks, and then being product pipelines, being able to deliver blended products and adapt the blend of oil for what that refinery product might desire. Pipelines, crude oil, natural gas, and various products like gasoline, diesel, those kind of products. The Wyoming Pipeline Authority, I think I saw Brian Jeffries. Hey, Brian. He's worked and created a master plan to expand the CO2 pipeline network in the state to connect CO2 emission sources with opportunities for enhanced oil recovery from miscible oil fields and maybe even long-term underground storage and sequestration if that need were to arise. The state has very good internet fiber, so that's a good asset for recruiting large data centers because we have some of the major cross-country lines passing east-west through the state. And the governor and the legislature have actually did some work to even expand that in the last legislative session. Our highways, major transportation routes, so good logistics infrastructure for getting feedstock materials in and getting end products distributed to the market by pipes, by rail, by trucks. And electricity generation and transmission. Increasing wind farms. Our colleague here on the board now has a combined cycle natural gas plant. It's pretty new here in Cheyenne. And a lot of transmission projects in various stages of planning to take Wyoming wind electricity to the markets. And again, low-cost electricity. So any electricity or energy-intensive company, if you brought your business here, instead of waiting for us to build a transmission, deliver it 500 miles, you could use that electricity right here, do your value-added creation here, and ship a higher value product to your market. This is something when I'm working with the Business Council on data centers. So one of the other really good resources we have is we have a really cool climate. And you can take that both ways, but some people, Wyoming's very cool, but if you look at the continental US, skipping Alaska, if you look at the color zones, 7, 6, and 5, especially 6, Wyoming has 3 of the coolest temperature zones in the continental US, only exceeded by Alaska on number 8. So any industry, any energy-intensive process that uses a lot of thermal energy but then needs to have cooling can benefit from this. And the fact that we're dry and arid helps reduce air conditioning cost, energy consumption, and even the need to install air conditioning equipment. So a lot of the data centers are now looking at, they can just cool their electronics by blowing this cool air through their equipment. So they're saving money on installing HVAC equipment and the energy to run that equipment. So I consider that a resource advantage for our state. And we saw this one a little bit earlier. So those who didn't see it, we generally think that Wyoming is arid, doesn't have a lot of water. Well, we do have a lot of water. It's just buried underground and locked up in coal. Based on the quantity of coal, about 300 million gallons per year is actually extracted from the state. It's just shipped in the rail cars, and it's burnt in the coal power plants, and it goes out the exhaust stack, unused. So if we were to use coal as a feedstock in such an integrated research park, we could extract that water before the coal gets converted. And then that could be a source of water. But a lot of times when we're strategizing what we could do in the state, there's a lot of thought, well, we have to find low water use process technologies or water neutral process technologies, because we're just not endowed with good water quality or quantity in the state. Very rare commodity. Except we have it in coal, but we just don't use it that much. And Jeremiah talked about the talent, the education, the youth. I guess I don't know the exact number, but I think our education budget is on the order of $1 billion per year. For K through 12, we have a Hathaway scholarship, so if your children graduate with good grades at high school, you can go to University of Wyoming for not quite a free ride, but almost a full paid opportunity to go to junior college or the University of Wyoming with very little out-of-pocket cost for yourself. The challenge there is that investment is largely exported to other states because we just don't have the jobs for these students that are educated to go to. So there is a significant return on investment opportunity that's in place for Wyoming to capitalize on. It's already there, we're already doing it, and we're losing out on it right now. So some solution options, if you were just to throw everything on the table, well, no change, so we just keep doing the same old, same old. We can cut our education budget, so we're not throwing as much money away. Well, that's probably not gonna happen. We can limit birth rates like China did. I think that's definitely not gonna happen. Or we can create career opportunities within Wyoming. So a large energy or industrial park now provides the opportunity for high quality jobs for our youth to go to, rather than having to seek a job outside of the state. So in addition to the economic benefits and return for building this park and getting the value added sale and economic growth potential from that, we're actually being able to tap in and increase our return on investment that we're already making on education. So that's an additional sort of synergistic value that I think we would get, something we should consider. Whoops, went a little bit too far. So I'll run through some ideas on opportunities that we could look at. This is a slide from Siemens, their gasification group. And what they looked at is, here's some products you could make if you gasified coal. So essentially when you gasify coal, gasify biomass, or you even take natural gas and you do a reformation process, you break it down into hydrogen and carbon monoxide. And those are a lot of the essential elements or molecules for making these products. So what Siemens has done here is they said making synthetic natural gas is probably the least worthwhile thing you can do if natural gas sells for $3.50 per million BTU, which currently it is below that right now. Now, if you go to the third one, $15 per million BTU, sort of the selling price in international markets. Okay, you moved up a little bit more. Power is down there in the lower end. But for coal, if we were to try and produce these other things, it might be 2 to 3% of the quantity of coal we currently use for power generation. So I think power is still going to be in the mix, because otherwise our coal sector is really going to go underground. Methanol is a very good feedstock for making a lot of other industrial chemicals. It's very flexible, very easy to make, gasoline, and if you were to include diesel, diesel would be between probably gasoline and ammonia, or right around there. And ammonia is a very good feedstock for making a lot of other things too. So these are things we can make from coal, natural gas, even our oil. And this is just to show that and reinforce that many of these valuable, higher value products are essentially carbon and hydrogen. So you see methanol up there in the middle, carbon has oxygen in there for hydrogens, ethanol, propane, methane. But look at diesel. Diesel right there has 16 carbon atoms and 34 hydrogen atoms. So you see, we just need to take the hydrogen and carbon that we have in those resources, and convert them and combine them into higher value products. And the technologies are there for us to do that. So getting hydrogen, we can get that from methane and water. And so we already know we have a lot of water in our coal, so there's a source of hydrogen. Well, this might be a little bit blurry, but this is also to kind of get into where's the market potentially going that we need to consider and plan for. And that is the EPA is currently considering new, stricter ozone regulations. And if they were to go into effect, parts of Wyoming would become non-attainment once that regulation is passed and required to be complied with. So those areas would then experience constrained business and economic growth if the industries had any kind of emissions that would add to that air climate criteria. So what I want to show, there's some opportunities to deal with that. If we were to make Fischer-Tropsch diesel from either natural gas or coal, it has significantly lower nitrogen oxide emissions. You can see the purple and the green bar. Those are different companies, different processes for making Fischer-Tropsch diesel. Lower NOx emissions. NOx is a precursor to ozone. HC, hydrocarbons, that's a precursor to ozone. So compared to petroleum crude oil refining diesel, Fischer-Tropsch diesel from natural gas or coal actually burns much more cleanly, and these are the improvements you get in emissions. And so using that kind of fuel derived from coal or natural gas, we have the ability to prevent or offset any stricter ozone emission regulations that might be coming in the future. So thinking about those possibilities, if that's a new market requirement that's coming our way, let's anticipate that and see if we can factor that into our thinking and make something work. Dr. Al Bland from Western Research Institute provided this slide. So it shows taking PRB coal. This is a ripe coal process, extracts the water out of it, and you can see that coming down in the brown box. And that could be sent in what's called a reforming process. SMR is steam reforming. So now that we've provided the water from the coal, steam reforming of natural gas is the most efficient way to doing reformation, convert natural gas into hydrogen and CO. And because we provided water for the steam, we actually get a lot more hydrogen. So now we're turning that water into a higher value product by making it into hydrogen that can go in and help us make ammonia. We can make synthesis gas, which you hear from that gasified coal, make methanol, and all those other products that we talked about. So this gives you an idea of the technology things we can combine and look for the integrations to make all these things come together. And Lloyd's telling me I need to wrap up. This, kind of going off to the side here, we did some studies with Microsoft trying to show them that they could power their data centers in Wyoming with coal or natural gas. And with the need for CO2 for enhanced oil recovery in the state being very high, in fact higher than the current supply, that if they sold their CO2 at say $25 per ton, and they paid $3 per MCF for natural gas for a 20 megawatt load on a data center, they could offset their cost by 43.4% by being able to get some income stream from that CO2. So turning CO2 into an asset and an income stream rather than a waste and an operating expense. So those are, again, some of the other things we could do. This is some work I did a while ago and update it from time to time, but just trying to show that if people hear the Association for Energy Efficient Economy, they typically rate Wyoming as one of the least energy efficient states in the country. But their criteria is, do you have this program, this program, this program, this program? If you don't have these mandated programs, you get a goose egg 0. But the actual performance tells a different story. So on a per capita basis, since we're the least populated state, we're above the US average. Massachusetts in the red line was rated the most energy efficient state in the country. But we consume a lot of energy to deliver resources that are consumed outside the state that we export. They're consumed by other people. So Wyoming, in that aspect, is very unique. We're the only state that exports far more energy than we consume. So we're unique, and it doesn't really show up. So then we convinced the Department of Energy that we should use a metric based on state gross domestic product to evaluate how good we are at using energy. So you can see the US average is in the purple line. Wyoming, on a state GDP basis, does far better, or does better, than Massachusetts, which was rated the best state by this other nonprofit association. So it depends on how you measure it. But this is a sign that we're getting more value for our energy consumption in our economy. And the integrated park should actually enhance this even further. You probably start right up on up, Lloyd. So again, low things we can strive for: low energy cost, energy consumption, low supply, lower equipment cost because we're more efficient, and that increase our competitiveness. And one thing we found with the oil company is, if you're the low cost producer in your industry, when there's a low price or a downturn, you're the one who's impacted the least. While other people are striving to keep their doors and business open, you can keep going. Others are going bankrupt, you keep going. So integrated together, we can devise a way to help our companies that come here be the lowest cost producer in their markets. And then that would be an attractive recruiting tool. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Don. Good job. Question from the board? Question from the audience? Well, you explained it so well, Don. But let's give Don a hand, and thank you so much, sir.